just cut to the chase. While we're waiting on 2 more people to log in. So who would like to read our first learning target for today?
Okay. I will learn that context clues can be used to answer ACT vocab
Questions.
I will read ACT vocab questions and use context clues to infer what a word means. I can choose the correct answer and prove it was the best choice.
Okay, so that's what we're going to do today. We've talked about all the different ACT reading section type of questions, and we just finished inferences. Does anybody, could you remember what those were?
Something, basically, you get an idea what the story is going to be about before the story reveals it.
Right, you draw your own conclusion without being told directly by the story or the text that you're reading. And I like to follow inferences with context clues because they have a lot of the same qualities where you're drawing your own conclusions based on things that you aren't explicitly told in the text. So they're very similar, but the nice thing about vocabulary is there's always a chance you're just going to know what the word means. We can't go over every single word in the English language, so we're going to go over some strategies to help you kind of figure out words that you might not be too familiar with, but like I said, you could always luck out and just know all of the words, and then it's even easier. So today, you might get lucky, but today we're under the assumption you're not going to know what these words mean, and this is this is a strategy you would use to figure out what an unfamiliar word means when it's on the ACT. So we're going to review some together, and then you're going to read your own ACT questions and some group work later, and we're going to go over how you got to those answers. So is everybody in now? You can join like as I'm going. It'll still have the code up in the bottom, so you'll still be able to see it. But let's see if I remember how to do this. Okay. So as I said, this is just another type of question. We've talked about all the ones above this already, the detail function, big picture, and inference. We talked a little bit about writer's tone, but we'll come back to that later. For now, we're just worrying about questions called vocabulary and context. All right. And what a vocabulary and context word question means is the ACT is going to underline just one word or maybe a phrase, and it's basically just asking you to define it. So they will usually pick words with more than one definition because they want to trick you. If you just look at the word without looking at the context it's in the sentence, you might not really know what it means. Even if you know one definition of the word, it might not be the definition they want. So here's an example taken right off of a practice test. So as it's used in line 45, the word read or read most nearly means to what? And they use that phrase a lot, that most nearly phrase, because if we look at our options, we all know what read or read means, right?
Right.
It could it be A? Could that be a definition for read?
I thought read was read.
Read was read? Mm-hmm.
I think it's kind of all of it.
Yeah, it could pretty much be all of these. If we're just looking at the word by itself, it could be to learn from print. That's what you do when you read a book. Could be observe. C is the only one I'm a little iffy on. And predict, it could be predict when you call for your free tarot card reading, right? That's still a reading, a prediction. So that's what I mean by taking into consideration the context, meaning how it's actually used, not just what the word is. So who wants to try this example? In this example, the girl remained aloof. What do we think aloof means?
What do I think it is?
Yeah, based on, what do you think it means in this sentence?
Like, not around the, area.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah.
Because we don't have enough, do we have enough information to even guess?
No.
No.
I think it's like an emotion.
I think
Yeah.
still
Might be an emotion, might be still. How about now? Who wants to guess what aloof means? Yeah.
She wasn't in the group. Or
Right.
Yeah.
She was outside of the group. She was alone or distant. So how did you figure that out?
Because it said, even though the friendly kids were trying to include.
Right, we know
she
that
still remained.
the kids were friendly. They were attempting to include her, but yeah, obviously there was some quality about her that made them unsuccessful. So we kind of understand that this just means apart. And that's exactly what it means, distant or unattached. So that is an example of using context clues. I'm sure you've heard about those in your other classes, especially English, but in here we're just going to worry about how they can help you on the ACT, which doesn't mean that's the only time you should be doing them. So can anybody give me an example of how this would come in handy outside of taking the ACT?
A test.
Another test? Yeah, or another section. Any other examples of why you might want to use context clues outside of right here, right now? Yeah, you're never going to know every word that you come across. I still come across words that I have to stop and think about or go look up on my phone, which is what everybody does these days. But when you're locked in a room and you're not allowed to have a phone, that's not going to be an option. So you're just going to have to use the clues that are given to you. And especially on the ACT, if they ask you about a word or a phrase, they kind of know you don't know it, so they do give you clues. The vocabulary questions are less about testing your vocabulary and more about testing your ability to figure out context clues, because there will be a clue either in that sentence or the surrounding sentence. So if you get to a vocabulary question, it's a good idea to read the sentence before it and after it, because it will usually put that into perspective for you. So the first type of context clue we're going to talk about is synonyms. Who can tell me, this is elementary, but who can tell me what a synonym is?
It has basically almost the same meaning.
Yeah, so a word that has basically the same meaning as another one. So this is an example of how a synonym could help you figure out what that word means. So who wants to take a guess? Modern computers have made typewriters obsolete. Obsolete, sorry. They're just not useful anymore. So what does obsolete mean?
Like, not there anymore. They're not used anymore.
Not used anymore. Yeah, they tell you, they just kind of restate the definition in a different phrase right after it. Not used anymore, synonym for obsolete, it's out of date. Okay, just like synonyms, we have antonyms, obviously words that mean the opposite. So using our knowledge of opposite words, if you can't read it up here, it's the same on your screen. The first medicine I took was very weak, but the second was so potent that I felt better right away. You said it already. Strong. Because strong is the opposite of weak. 1 second. Let's keep going, shall we? Stretch this out for 20 more minutes. It was strong. We know that because it's saying it was the opposite of the first medicine, which we know was already very weak. Okay. The third type of context clue you might find is if the text actually gives you examples. So for example, in this one, acts of compassion, such as helping a sick friend or feeding the poor and hungry, are never forgotten. So we have examples of it. What do we think compassion means?
Showing like you're a good person.
That you care.
Yeah, caring. Being good and caring, being tender towards other people. because we get examples. Those are compassionate or kind and caring things to do. And lastly, much like examples, sometimes they'll just explain it to you, or especially in the humanities and the natural science and the social science sections. They don't do it on the fiction section, but especially in the other three, they'll straight up give you a definition. So the first one is an example of an explanation, so kind of explaining what they mean. My friend was so forlorn after her fish died that she cried for days. So what does forlorn mean? Sad. You really don't even need to explain how you know that. You don't cry after something dies because you're happy. At least I hope not, unless you're a maniac. And the second example, more about hurricanes, this is more of an example of, I took this right off of an ACT. This is them giving you a definition. So what is infrasound?
Like it's a specific type sound. So it's a specific type of sound. Because this is 20 hertz or something like that.
Yeah, they tell you. Sounds below 20 hertz that we can't hear. Sound waves that we can't hear because they're too low for us. They don't come right out and say, here is the definition, but they do just give it to you like that. Okay. So, I think this is the first of a few screens we're going to do, where in the top right corner of your screen there's a little purple circle. You can grab that with your mouse and move it around. We're going to read this together. This is the same example question we looked at earlier. Go ahead, I'll give you a couple minutes to read it, and drag that circle around which letter you feel like the best answer is. That you can drag around. So as it's used in this sentence, now what does the word read mean? Circle the letter of the answer.
Oh.
Everybody got it? Give you a couple more minutes. See what you got. Ooh, yay. Okay, most people got it right. The answer is B. Could anybody tell me why?
Because they're looking at the growth on the skull,
Yeah, we're looking at growth rings on something's skull with a microscope. And what do we do with a microscope?
it could reproduce and
We look through it.
yeah.
So it means to observe. Okay, let's try one more. Okay, here's another word we all know, but it has more than one definition, which is the ACT's favorite kind of word. The areas in the rainforest that contain the most fruit trees are usually the places where sloths are concentrated. We all know what a sloth is, right? The rainforest animal, okay. So as it's used here, what do we think concentrated means? Let's see how you did. Okay, good. Most people, save for it looks like maybe 2 of you, you got it right. The answer is C. Means gathered together. Who got the answer right? Okay, good. Can some combination of you tell me how you came to that conclusion? What about this sentence let you know that here concentrated means gathered together?
Because everybody knew to stay at one place to get some fruit.
Yeah.
Yeah, they all wanted to come to get the fruit. That's why that little detail about fruit trees, ACT threw in there to clue you in. They're eating that.
I mean, but they could eat it to get stronger.
They could eat it. They could eat it to get stronger. I wish that's how it worked. I usually just eat and get fatter, but. Okay, here's one more. This is a long one. This is an example of how you should read the surrounding sentences to get the clues you need. This one is tough. I was just telling Colin when I pulled this out of the example test of the ACT, I actually struggled to get the right answer. And I had to flip in the back and look at the answer key. After I used all my context clue strategies, of course. Do we have 8? Everybody confident in the answer you have?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Okay, most people got it right again. That's really good. It means increase in amount. Who's trying to sneak it down there? It's okay.
I almost thought it was fertile, but I had to pick my person.
Yeah, this is what makes them tricky. They're, instead of just saying, what's the definition, they give you a bunch of other words that could kind of work in that sentence, and they want you to pick the best one. So according to them, the ACT, my favorite people, the answer could not be A, because fertile means, it's more like an animal and plant word, like nothing is growing out of it. So it wouldn't really be fertile. D is obvious. That's one of those obvious answers we can check off right away. Yeah, like we talked about before, that the first thing you should do, the instant you're not sure about something, is eliminate the obviously wrong questions, or answers rather, and we know it's not reward, just because that doesn't make any sense. I was kind of caught between improvement and increase in amount when I was doing this, when I was typing this question earlier, because I feel like they're both close, but after I read their explanation, it made a lot more sense. They said improvement, you're not really improving anything, because to be improved, something has to be kind of bad, and then you do something to it to make it better, and that's not really what we're talking about. The sentence is just saying that under the so many layers of dirt in the earth, there's some amount of iridium all over the place, on the whole planet. So that's why they're saying an increase in amount as compared to the rest of the earth's dirt. This was a really hard one. I think I actually got it wrong when I was doing the practice test. So that's the answer they want, and that's why. But even if you didn't know that, if you could just narrow it down to 2, then you at least have a 50-50 chance of answering it right. So, okay, here's just a little summary. I'm going to leave this up while we work on our worksheets. To use context clues on the ACT, especially for these annoying questions about vocabulary words that you probably don't know. Remember to read the sentences around it, so before and after it. And as always, eliminate the wrong answers, which is what you should be doing on every section of the ACT for every question anyway. And then check for synonyms or antonyms, words that mean the same or something different. Infer meanings if they give you examples, and keep an eye out for a definition, because there is a chance that they might just tell you what it is. So I'm going to leave this up and pass out this worksheet. It's only 6 questions long, and I know it looks like a lot of reading, but don't be nervous. I'll pass it out before I explain it so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, so as you'll see, I did not give you the entire reading passage for each question. I thought that would be cruel. And it's not really the point. I just cut out enough to include the paragraphs and the paragraphs around whatever word that question is going to ask you about. So it'll tell you exactly in line 15, in line 134, and I gave you the sections of the test that include that, so you guys can get into groups. No, you can do it by yourself if you want, but if you want to work together, you can. So I'll give you a couple minutes. We'll wait and see how long it takes, but you can work in groups of more than 2 if you want. If you want to do 3 to a group, just so you have somebody to talk it out with. Yes, I will get you a pencil. And this one's broken already. Hold on. Make sure as you're answering these, just circle or underline any context clues you find around it, because when we review this, after everybody's done, we're going to go over it together. And in addition to telling us what the right answer is, you and or your group will have to explain how you got that answer, what clues you used, or how you eliminated the other options. Everybody get it? No questions? You can spin around with the chair if you want. You want a pencil too? I will get you one. Sharper one more. This one's pretty good. There you go.
Can I get one of those packets?
Oh, did I not give you one?
No.
I'm sorry. I didn't see you all the way over there. I don't think these are too hard. Yep, okay, I'll get a copy. That's pretty good. This is one of those questions where you should read the sentence before it and see what that sentence says. long sentence though. I think it starts right here with not only. Mhm. Wow, everyone's confused. Did you just say right under 20?
It goes to people first aid.
Oh, you're fast too. You're fast too. If you get stuck, just look at the list again. It should still be up on your screen. See if you can go through and find any of those. Make sure you're reading the surrounding sentences for some of them too. That really helps, especially with number 1. That passage was hard to read too. Yeah, it was really, really long. That's why I got in the middle here. Well, can you eliminate any? Yes, that's a safe one. looks like most people are finishing up, but don't rush if you're not done. Everyone's done too? Yeah. No, not for this, just because you won't be able to when you're in taking the ACT. I didn't want everybody to look it up now, because we're gonna practice, we're trying to practice how to figure it out by ourselves. So let's see. 30 is way down at the bottom. Okay. Okay. So over the past year, sunspots have proliferated and it made the sun brighter. Let me see. That's actually kind of a tricky question. Okay, was there any you can eliminate? So we know they proliferated and made the sun had brightened. So is there any you know it definitely can't be? What happened? No, it's gonna be one of those two. Okay. Here we go. So you had to read the sentence before. So if you assume they decreased in 86 and it got dimmer. So if they decreased and made it dimmer. They're really sneaky with those clues in the sentences before and after, especially with how long some of these sentences are. I think number one was what, 10 lines difference? Right, it makes it easier sometimes to cross out answers you know can't be right. Something says the opposite of what the text does, at least. You're done? Okay, you're done. You're on the last question. tricky because they expect you to make the connection to like space.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Different. I know, they do that on purpose. That's why for most of these, they're words you know, they just have more than one definition, and everybody gets confused because they make them that way on purpose. Okay, I think you guys were the last two. You got this one was hard to understand. So, no, it's about the media and public opinion. And we're talking here about, where's that sentence? Okay. The story, I'm going back to the sentence before it. So the story is, that means, do you know what continued national, like the whole nation is watching it? Kind of like a lot of things that are going on now, where the whole country is paying attention. Everybody has opinions, and the focus shifts away from the facts or the truth and more on, you know, what's going on, like the theater, like people being dramatic and or what people say or how people feel. So if we're moving away from the facts and we're focusing on things that aren't facts, then the sentence we're looking for here says to take a step away from all the drama, basically, and just report on the facts is a distant possibility. So do you think, if you know that the whole country doesn't care about the facts and they're worrying about things that aren't facts, do you think it would be easy to make a play that is just about the facts and not about people's opinions? No, it wouldn't be. So, yeah. Yeah, that's what they're saying. They're saying it would be difficult and you wouldn't expect it. It would be unlikely. So, okay, I think everybody's just about done. Let's go through these. We won't do this for too long. Okay. Number one. Oh, it's me. Sorry. Number one. Okay, as it's used in line 15 in this example, the word privileged means what? Who's got a stab? It's a close call. Are there any we could eliminate? Could we take it down to 50-50? What one could... Aristocratic? That's one of the ones, do you know what that means? Have you heard it before? It means,
Like blue collar.
yeah, like high society or wealthy or well off. Even if you don't know what that means,
It wasn't the right answer.
are there, well, we're looking for two that you could cross out right away. Or maybe just
Confidential.
what? Confidential. Right, because what does confidential mean?
Hidden or so.
That's being confident. If something is confidential,
Hidden or kept a secret.
yeah, it's kept a secret. Like your student file is confidential. Not everybody can just run up and read it. It's secret stuff. So we know it's not going to be confidential because nothing about this says the lawyers are kept a secret. That wouldn't make any sense. And we know it wouldn't be authorized because that just means allowed. So it'd be either superior or aristocratic. It's so close between superior and aristocratic, but the correct answer is aristocratic because superior means you're better than someone. Aristocratic just means you're richer.
So which one is it?
It's aristocratic. Because, especially on the ACE, they're never going to say that one group of people is better than another group of people, because that's not fair. So just go for the one that means wealthy. That one was kind of tricky. Okay. So who wants to explain to me what the correct answer for number 2 is? Colin, go ahead.
So I put interrupts is D.
It is interrupts. How did you come to that conclusion?
Because it says the hills of Iowa's secret treasure, and it says punctuates the famous flatness of the Midwest with sharp slopes and cool, which means it like breaks it up and so it's not flat anymore.
Yes, very good context clue using. Could you guys hear him over here?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because the rest of that sentence talks about how flat the Midwest is, but then it's punctuated by these high peaks. So if the whole Midwest is flat, and then occasionally there's these interruptions of high peaks, it would be interrupt. We know it wouldn't be questions, because again, usually one possible answer is just going to make no sense, and you will know to cross it out immediately, because it's that obviously wrong. In this case, it was questions, because the hills aren't asking anybody any questions. That would be silly. It's interrupts. Okay. Number 3. How about, you were struggling with number 3, but we got through it. Yes, you picked G. Right. You probably didn't hear her. She said this passage is about rattlesnakes, and that sentence is about rattlesnakes. 2 of the options are humans for that answer. They're saying it's a characterization of humans. We know that's not right because we're talking about snakes. And then J says it's a word for describing a herpetologist, which is a scientist that studied reptiles. Again, if you're a scientist, you're also a human, so we know it's not F or H right out of the bat. So it's either a scientific word meaning rattlesnake and a general word for a group of unfairly accused of wrongdoing.
I'll put it
I thought it was a good passage.
You thought it was what? It is not F.
I'll put J.
Nope. It is not J, it's actually,
G.
yeah, they got it up here, it's G. It's the scientific word for rattlesnakes, and she made a good point when she was figuring it out, because the other option is a general word. Does that look like a general word? General means common or not specific. This looks like a very specific word, so we know it's not a general term for anything. So then the only answer left is the scientific name for rattlesnakes. Okay, halfway done. Anybody want to try number 4? And explain how you got that.
Well, I got H because it says in the visual system, so I just think visual because you're trying to do your memory for image, so I put visual sensory memory.
Yep, you got it right. In the visual system, these memories are called iconic memory. And if they're in the visual system, and the sentence goes on to say that the systems that control the way you hear and what you touch, those memories have different names, the only thing that would make any sense is that this is the specific name for visual memories, and not remembering what we hear or remembering things we touch. Good reasoning. Okay, number 5. I know you got number 5. Did you tell everybody what clue led you to the right answer?
First of all, it says as the number of sunspots decrease and this is over the past year. And yeah, as sunspots have developed, the sun has risen, so it increased.
Right. It was kind of tricky to spot, but once you found it, the answer was really easy. If you look in the sentence before it, it says, in 1986, the number of sunspots decreased and the sun got dimmer. So then in this sentence that it wants you to look at for the word proliferated, if sunspots sunspots decreased, if the number of sunspots decreased and the sun got dimmer, this sentence is saying sunspots have proliferated now and the sun got brighter. Yeah, this is the antonym clue. If there were fewer of them and it got dimmer, and now we're saying they did this word we don't know, proliferated, and it got brighter, yeah, it has to mean they increased, because it's the opposite of decrease. That one wasn't too bad, still kind of tricky. All right, the last one. In line 14, the word distant most nearly means unlikely. Oh, good. Everybody got that one. How did you know? That meant unlikely. This passage was really hard to read. At least I think so anyway, but I think anything about politics is really hard to read.
Does it say like a possibility?
Yeah, it's a distant possibility, which is just a chance of something. And all the other options are referring to space.
Like a possibility is like not exactly happening. Like it's,
Yeah, you
it's a
can't.
chance of happening.
It's a chance of happening,
But not
and
likely.
you can't calculate a possibility in miles, so we know it's not distance. This is an example of them trying to trick you on purpose with a word they know you know, but that you usually only know to calculate how long it's going to take to get from your house to your friend's house, or how far it is from here to Cancun. So this isn't about how far something is physically. This is the other kind of far, which just means small chance. So, okay, you can make sure your names are on those. I will give you your points for those today. Let me turn the light back on.